Hello, everybody. Thanks a lot for joining Marketing Intelligence Live. Marketing Intelligence is a channel that creates content that appeals to marketing and media professionals. Today, our topic of discussion is content marketing. To discuss the same, I have a panel with me. So let me bring on my panelists. Firstly, we have Rebecca De Silva.
Hi,
Hi,
Nikhil. Thanks
Rebecca.
for having me again.
Thanks for coming, Rebecca. Next, we have Shubhrika Dogra.
Hi everybody, hi Nikhil.
Thanks for coming down, Shubhrika.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks a lot. Content marketing involves creating content and distributing it in order to stimulate interest in the product or services of a brand. Content marketing involves creating content that appeals to your target audience and educates, informs, or entertains them, but does not directly sell to them. So, we'll start off our first topic within the discussion about the different stages in a content marketing funnel. So to elaborate on the same, I'll start with Rebecca.
Yeah, thanks, Nikhil. So, with a content marketing funnel, there's a lot to be said in the different stages. Different companies, I think, have different semantics on what they generally call a content marketing funnel. But yeah, to just show you what I generally refer to, and in terms of what we do at the business where I work in, Nikhil, could you please present my slide?
Sure.
Thanks. So before we start off with going into the funnel itself, these are like the main points that you would have in overall inbound marketing methodology. So the same headings that you see there are things that you have in the funnel. You first have the attraction stage, you have a conversion stage, you have a closing stage, and then what's known as a delight stage. Now, this is something that I generally follow and the methodology that I'm familiar with, but there are a lot of people who have the same kind of concept in mind, but will have it in a little bit of different terms. So just to elaborate on the same, I'll give you a insight or give you some pointers into what constitutes this entire funnel. So what makes it is you're taking strangers who have absolutely no idea of your brand and you put them in the funnel to ultimately emerge as promoters or people who advocate your brand. So in the attraction stage, what you have is your social media, you have keywords, you have your general population of web pages, blogs, etc., to getting the sort of attraction stage, which means they are somewhat knowledgeable about your product. Then you move into a conversion stage where you try to get them to buy your product or try your service, etc., which consists of things like landing pages, forms, and contracts. Closing is when you actually integrate them into your CRM. So that means that, yeah, these people who have reached this stage, this is typically about the middle of the funnel stage. And this constitutes, people who are almost ready to close or people who are in the final stages of their buying journey. And finally, your delight stage is a stage that people often ignore. So they think that once you're closed with your customers, you generally move on to other things and trying to attract new people. But it's important to remember that what you do is you have to maintain a constant, touch points with your closing customers as well. So to just show you the funnel, Nikhil, can you move on to the next slide?
Yes.
So what's here and the acronyms that are given here basically stand for top of the funnel, middle of the funnel, and bottom of the funnel. And like I said, what you're doing is you're taking strangers who are completely unaware of your product to first becoming aware of the problem statement that you're solving for. Once they become aware of the problem, then they realize what the solution is for it. Once you get your solution, that's when you introduce your product or service, where you talk about how you're solving for the problem and what your solution consists of, maybe even a few differentiating factors over there. That's when you bring in things about what makes your product or service unique. And then finally you leave them out of the funnel as being completely aware people. So so this is just a rough infographic on how it generally goes. Like we often mention, and the reason we call it a funnel is because you're starting with a larger audience and you narrow it down and winnow it down until you have just a few leads, or your final customers. So that's typically what different stages in the content marketing funnel looks like. You go from strangers to prospects to leads to finally informed decision makers, who ultimately the success metric that you track there is they become people who advocate your product right at the end.
That's right. So, Rebecca, the stage, if you could explain with some kind of an example for this, like say a SaaS product or a product which a digital product, how this would go, like just briefly.
Sure. So let's take, a very simple product of, say, your gym membership. So when you start off as someone who wants to go to a gym, you are completely unaware of what sort of gyms are available, what sort of equipment they have. So you start by obviously looking online. In the digital age, you're going to start first and foremost by trying to check things that are near you or things that are highly recommended. So when you start off, the content that you want to be displayed is more information on the topic. So you typically would see things like either social media pages, you'd see photographs of these gyms, you'd either see it in a blog, if you see like newspaper articles that, hey, this is a gym that you can go to. That's something that you start off at the top of the funnel. Now you're aware that, okay, there are gyms in my area. I want to go to one of them. So at this stage, you kind of reach the middle of the funnel because you're deciding that you want to go for one. Now, when you're trying to figure out what is the best one to pick, you look at educational resources, you look at different sort of resources that they have. You can see, you either try to see whether they've got videos online, whether they've got testimonials, things that are advocating for them. So they're really pushing to you. And at this stage, the on the other hand, your gym or whoever else is trying to sell their product or service to you would typically want to push their agenda forward by offering you things. So they probably say, hey, if you come to our gym, you get like a 5% discount. Or, if you try out our product, or if you try this sort of workout schedule or something, we also are integrated with these brands and you get benefits from this side. That's really the pushing or the selling stage at this point. It's almost as if it was sales. So you have people who are really pushing at that point, trying to get out personalization campaigns to you, because they, at this point, at least a good marketing company would know that you are a visitor on their page, would know that, okay, if you've watched a couple of videos, if you've liked a couple of their posts, if you've downloaded something before, they know that, okay, you're one to look out for. And then when it finally reaches the awareness, or the final stage where you're making a conversion, that's when you reach the bottom of the funnel where you finally pick one. And at this point, it shouldn't just be that, okay, they've got you, now they don't make an effort anymore. It should start off with, people showing you demos of, okay, this is what happens when you use our product. They try to get across something from you as well and keep you continuously informed, so that when you make a decision, you're coming back to them. You're becoming an advocate of their product by continuously coming back. And the only reason they can maintain that contact with you is if they keep constant touch points with you, and if they continually, maintain that relationship with you. So that's the bottom of the funnel.
That's right. Very well explained by Rebecca. So, Shubhrika, your version of the different stages of how a content marketing funnel is generally used by marketers.
Right. So if we can quickly go to the slide.
That's right. You can start it.
Great. So a lot of it has already been touched by Rebecca in a like comprehensive and exhaustive manner. But what I understand is that a lot of people, when we speak to people who are just starting out, they usually don't understand our marketing terms. And even for us, it took a few years for us to reach and hear and understand what all of this really means, how it impacts us, and how exactly are we supposed to go about it. So the way I began with it, specifically in a social media world where we're using more of image content or video content as compared to text content now. There's a lot of things that we need to simplify for ourselves, right? And naturally, the first course that we have to take is the research, right? So whenever working with a client or your own personal content strategy, the first thing that comes to mind is, what am I supposed to do about this, right? Where does the research begin? So one place where the research can begin is to figure out who your competitors are, what is working for them, what is not working for them. So, of course, to ignore completely what has not been working for your competitors, profit off of the mistakes of others that have already been committed, and then utilize the things that are working for your competitors, in the meaning that they've already done the work, which now you don't need to work on, right? So, for example, utilizing the keywords that your competitors are profiting off of, or figuring out the topics that they are covering, kind of themes that they're using for their images, probably, or the platforms that they use for editing their content, things like that. So a lot of things can go into your research itself, which is why it is the biggest, I think, the part of that cone, that funnel. And then when it comes to building your strategy, it is also a part of your research stage, because as along you go around and research about what's happening around you with your competitors or your audience, meanwhile you're simultaneously building your own strategy too. When you decide that this is XYZ is what my audience likes, and then ABC is what my audience doesn't like, so according to that you build your own strategy, and then you begin creating, right? So what we do know is that without research, creating would not have the kind of impact that we want it to have, right? Creating is the stage where you decide whether your content is of the video format or of the audio format or of the text format, or if you want it to be a combination of all of those, right? Or maybe a sum of those permutations and combinations. What kind of format are you using for your content creation? So a lot of people would choose doing podcasts, to a lot of people who like doing YouTube videos instead, or probably advertising in itself, with newspaper content specifically being text content, ad copy being this kind of text content we look at digitally. Where do you want to find your target audience? What is the kind of content that your niche audience is actually consuming is decided basically at this point, while you simultaneously start creating. Now, one thing I like to emphasize on a lot whenever talking to people who are just starting out in the world of creating content is that unless you start creating, there's not going to be a response for you to act on again, right? So it is important to research and try to decide on multiple factors, but then holding off the creation process is not going to get you anywhere at all, because things will keep changing every single day. So while we research, we build and create simultaneously. That is how we keep the cycle running, that is how we keep the loop growing. And then eventually we reach to the metrics per objective, like defining what our objective was supposed to be in the first place, as to why are we creating this content, why are we marketing the content that we are creating in the first place. That becomes the objective. And then the metrics that help us identify how, whether this content is working, whether my strategy of marketing is working or not, or exactly what is it that I need to change. So identifying those metrics is the third step, because once the creation has been done and the content is put out there, this is where we start identifying how we're going to figure out whether or not it's growing, it's working or not, right? So the objectives could be getting more leads, it could be getting more conversions. Let's say, like Rebecca mentioned, conversions basically would mean sales, right? So the end goal, of course, for any business, for any marketing strategy, is to get more sales out. But then we don't like, so content marketing is like that concept of Inception, the movie. If someone's watched it, they'll get it. So basically what it's about is like putting it into the mind of your consumer that they would want to buy the product or service without cold calling to them, right? Calling out to them, asking to them upfront that, hey, this is the product and I'd like you to buy it. But you make them believe that this would be a product or service that will benefit their life with the real factors of it. Those metrics could probably include of engagement rates of your content or the recreations that you're getting. It could include a lot of analytical metrics like we have in Google Ads or Google Analytics or any other analytical platform. It eventually comes down to what exactly your objective is. For someone, the objective could specifically be getting more website traffic, to someone bringing out more views on their video. Varies, right? We then move on to promotion, because once the content is out there, we of course want to put in as limited money as possible into promoting the content, into getting more views out of the content. But promotions become a crucial part of it when we reach a stage where we've started getting some kind of limited engagement out of it. Not huge viral levels of engagement, but then, yeah, once we see that the world is starting to react to our content to a limited extent, there's where the promotion part of it comes in. So you promote with paid platforms, you promote with word of mouth specifically, and then the contacts that you eventually build. So it's in the long run, of course, marketing is one thing, content marketing specifically, which is supposed to be a strategy for the long run. It doesn't necessarily start giving back to you within a week or so. It could take up to months and even years at times, depending on the format of content that you choose. But promotion at one point of time is going to become necessary to be able to reach wider audience, and then to be able to retain the audience as well that you've already created. Finally, you come down to the analysis part of it. So this is similar to the concept of controlling that we have in management. When you look back at what you've already done, analyze how your content and your strategies have performed. Have your marketing strategies performed the way you wanted them to, or is there something that you could improve? Are there some strategies that are not working for you at all? This is the stage where you finally look back and analyze each and everything to come back to the top of the funnel once again. Now, one funnel format could be niching down your audience. This funnel format basically speaks to how are you supposed to create and market your content. What are the steps that you should take to create and market that content, apart from, in addition to, I would say, understanding the kind of audience that you're marketing to.
That's right. That's very well explained by Shubhrika. And I don't know follow-up questions because everything was covered. So great. We'll move on to our next topic of discussion. Now, if we could specifically go through a content marketing strategy. So we'll start off if we can take a B2C product and the complete kind of a strategy that can be used for the same. So we'll start with Rebecca.
Okay. So, yeah, like you mentioned, we have different strategies for different types of companies. And when you use B2C versus B2B, there are differences in the way you approach it. But ultimately, I think with content marketing, your end goal is the same thing. So, to highlight my product, I've actually chosen GoPro. I'm pretty sure a lot of us are familiar with GoPro, the small little camera that you can attach on, any part of your body when you're filming. So it's meant to give you a more live experience of the things that you're capturing rather than something that's staged. So I think GoPro is a very good example of a company that put their content marketing ahead of their e-commerce. So I think, like Shubhrika mentioned right at the beginning, content marketing is about putting ideas into your head without, explicitly mentioning that you want people to buy your product or service or thing like that. You want it to be a mix of both. You want people to know about your product, but at the same time, you also want people to understand the place you're coming from. You want to have a sort of story as to where it is going and what makes you different automatically. Ultimately sets you apart in terms of your content marketing strategy. So with GoPro, a really good example of how they've put their content marketing at the forefront is one thing to mention is just with the plain layout of their their website and their resources. So on the screen right now, I think on the left side you can see an image of GoPro and like a video of there. So this is actually a screenshot that's taken from their hub pages. So it's called the channel, and it's like a resource page. Basically, all companies and stuff ultimately have like a section that's dedicated for their resources. So you have, it's either called your blogs, it's called videos, and you have a bunch of different categories in that. And what GoPro has done is they've put content on this particular page that highlights what you can do with the product. So all the product views and the entire videos that are shot in this page are very raw. So you have people actually utilizing the product, and you can see how people would explore or use it. So in this video that's there right now, it's about someone who's skating down a street and he has the GoPro with him, and it's just a very simple film of how you can do that. And a beautiful example to show how they're actually promoting the lifestyle of GoPro versus buying the product is in their CTA over there. So you have their CTA where normally you would have in an e-commerce site, you'd say buy this product or shop for this product or something like that. But what GoPro does is they say get this shot. So it makes the buyer's journey a little bit easier. You think that, okay, I want to emulate that. I want to see how I can get that particular shot. And so I will explore your product. So it's coming from a place of, we actually care about you guys and we want to show your experience rather than just buy our product. I think GoPro, their entire motto itself is called enabling the world to capture and share their passion, if I'm not wrong. So they've used this tagline, and it's very focused towards experiences. So it's something that they've done pretty well in terms of their content marketing. And another thing towards the right here, where the hashtag says GoPro Girl. So what normal companies and a lot of different enterprises tend to forget is their actual audience. And we think that, audience personalization a lot of times is ignored a lot. So people just market out everything considering just one audience in mind. And what GoPro does is they skew the pages to cater to different kind of audiences. So you have where the initial story of GoPro started, where it was only to capture videos by athletes and their journeys from there. It slowly expanded to more normal stuff like just everyday life experiences. And with GoPro Girl, the way they've created that particular page just to highlight how women use GoPro, because that could be very different than how a male or a man would use it. You might have more aesthetic appeals for a woman there. And that's what they've done brilliantly with their content marketing strategy. And I think one thing that is very prominent here is that it's very user centric, which is something that a lot of other enterprises normally ignore.
That's right. So Rebecca, this is like in GoPro, they are showcasing an experience. So the you can see a prospect could buy the product. He's motivated that I can also showcase my experiences like this, or I can shoot like this. So would you like to talk more about like it's kind of experiential based marketing that you are doing here?
Yeah, so again, like content marketing and experiential marketing are two different things, but it doesn't mean you can't use content from your experiential marketing in your normal strategy. So when you have experiential marketing in terms of events and other promotional material that you generally have people who would showcase their testimonials through videos. So the same thing gets kind of recycled by the company to show real world experiences and make it more relatable. So what they're promoting is not just an experience, but to also become part of this kind of community of members who use GoPro. So it's a different kind of content strategy where it's not like Shubhrika said, it isn't very text based. It's more video testimonial based. It's more image based because naturally we're looking at the product as a camera. So you want to see it rather than just read about it. So it's important to understand in terms of, the where they're coming from their experiential standpoint, as well as, what kind of media they're using to promote the same thing. And obviously for other products it might not work the same way. So if you have something like say if you're buying a washing machine, I don't think you'd care too much about a video on how it's running. You'd probably want to read about the specifications of it.
Hmm. That's right. Even in that, I feel somewhere how it is used and how you set it up in terms of, say, I'm talking about the washing machine, that would
Yeah,
also add as content for this. And in content
precisely.
marketing, what a lot of things what happen is that the user generated content also comes in. Like they are talking about a product and reviewing. So it won't be part of your strategy, but it's something like you can say you're monitoring that there's a social listening happening because when somebody is searching it on YouTube, they look at reviews when they are buying some product, especially of
Exactly, exactly.
yes,
So
definitely.
testimonials do play like a great part, and I mean, even I'm one of those people. I like if I'm buying something, I generally look on Quora first. I'm going to see people who answer content, or people who have gotten articles that are written, detailed descriptions from real world people. So I know it's not a marketing gimmick.
That's right. So we'll move to Shubhrika. If she could take us through an example of content marketing strategy for a B2C product.
Yeah, I have quite a few to, and Nikhil, can you go to the slide?
Sure.
Right. So let's talk about the kind of products that can be a part of luxurious based or maybe high value B2C products or services also is something that we'll get to eventually. But then B2C products specifically can include automobile or homes and estates. It could include home decor as well. And a lot of things that we see in our day-to-day lives like haute couture apparel or any kind of apparel that the middle class families would feel think twice before buying or would probably wait for the sale season to come up before
Hmm.
going out and purchasing that. In my opinion, I think that can be taken up as the sectors of B2C products that can be of high end value. Now, for people who are a part of that industry, it's important for them to identify their market first. For example, there was this one example we used to study back in school while understanding marketing concepts or platforms to for marketing is that you never see a BMW or a Mercedes ad running on your television. That is because they don't market to the masses, right? You would, however, probably meet their agents or people from Mercedes at a wine tasting. That's because both of those things are activities or a product that speaks to the high end customers, people who are from a certain class, right? A middle class family, specifically from India, is rarely to go to a wine tasting and effectively, of course, read their brochure. So you won't see a Mercedes ad on the television, which is meant for the masses, but find it at places where a very niche group of people can be found at, right? For example, a cruise, right? So that is what, first of all, you do if you're from a high end industry, is to identify your target audience. And then you find out the content format that best suits your audience, right? So in case so like speaking about automobile or let's talk about Levi's, the picture that is visible here, a lot of people will be able to identify this picture as the most recent ad that Levi's came out with was with Deepika Padukone and a few women that already do use Levi's in India.
Hmm.
In that entire advertisement, nowhere do you see the words or hear anyone asking you to buy Levi's products, right?
Hmm.
It's just a form of lifestyle that you witness. What they're trying to showcase is that anybody with any body type, with any profession, with any sort of likings or dislikings can find something for themselves at Levi's. As a brand, they support every body form, they support every occupation, and women almost every color is what they've specifically shown in their advertisement, right? But coming from a middle class family ourselves, we understand that unless the sale season was up, we won't go out and buy Levi's products. For us, they are high value, right? So although Levi's now comes up on the television quite a lot as compared to how much it used to back in the day, it still targets the kind of audience that can understand that without saying these things, that we are trying to support race and color and gender equality or body formats or body image issues. Without mentioning these terms, our audience can automatically understand these things, right? Just by looking at the advertisement. They know their audience already. They know that they are intellectual people. They are aware about what's going on around in the world, and they can adapt these things easily just with that visual, right? And then, so you go on to create your content and engage. Even with advertisements today, it's not that once the ad comes out, there's no engagement about it, right? So an advertisement will come out, there will be brand ambassadors who post about it on their own social media, people who featured in the ad will talk about it on their own social media platforms, and then news platforms will start raving about them. For example, newspapers, like there was this specific ad has already been featured in a few Medium articles which talk about how Levi's is trying to bring change, right? So there are platforms that you identify beforehand where you engage with your audience even after the content has already been created. And then you survey through that engagement, right? So now, once that ad has already been published, what's happening after that is that the audience is reacting to it, right? So as an audience, let's say, for example, that I did not like a particular statement. There was no statement in this particular ad, but then, for example, if there was, I can have the ability now to react to it, and then the brand also has the ability to connect with me directly. The channels of communication have been removed altogether. So engagement and surveying through that engagement for the brand to find out what their audience is liking, what they're not liking, is much easier than it used to be, right? There's no need for primary surveys of hitting doorbells anymore. So, and the final step comes on to be to act on the results of that target audience surveys, right? So platforms like social, then platforms like email now, you can directly reach out to your brands, right? So you are directly in contact with your target audience. So effectively, you have the ability to act on the results that come out from those surveys eventually, right? And it's become a loop. So it's not just pulling content out there, pushing content out there. Your audience is not just consuming it at one end and not reacting to it. It's now a loop of understanding, creating, and like going back into that circle, right? So one of these examples for high-end apparel is Levi's. Nikhil, could you go to the next slide, please?
Yes.
Right. Two more examples that we'll talk about briefly. One being Mahindra and Mahindra. We see one of their, a lot of their ad campaigns specifically focus on adventure. Now, automobile specifically in itself is already a high-end product and doesn't really speak to low-class people of a lot of countries who are not able to afford that product. But as and when it has now become a necessity. So there are some cars that talk to almost the entire nation, and then there are some cars that only talk to a specific type of people. So for Mahindra and Mahindra, what they've done is not identified the class of people, but they've identified the interests of their target audience. And since they are mostly into manufacturing SUVs, which are sports utility vehicles, so what they do is focus on targeting the audience that likes adventure and then create campaigns around that audience to help them understand that you could go off-roading, or you could turn your back on the mountains, meaning that, you know, you could just stop looking around you and go anywhere that you would want to. You don't necessarily have to look for a specific road track. But what they're doing is, like Rebecca has talked about, experiential marketing. With GoPro, they're using the product to show the kind of videos that you can make what Mahindra and Mahindra is doing, the kind of experiences that you can have with this kind of utility vehicle. Similar thing is what Asian Paints has done with their most recent advertisement of Ranbir Kapoor, right? So what they show is that there's a certain type of person that speaks to probably the women of the country, or the certain type of person that you would want to get married to. And they're not talking about the characteristics of the person at all. What they're talking about is having good quality paint. That's a home decor product, right? Asian Paints is just not utility anymore. It's a home decor product now, with a lot of their product accessorizing things that they've come out with. So what they do is just tell you a story that this is what you could have in comparison to the rest of the world, and they just leave it up to you. So there's tons of forms of content that you can create for the B2C market as well, in the high end segment of products. But then it's completely up to the audience now. They won't call it out to you to go ahead and buy the product anymore.
That's right. Shubhrika, but with respect to the campaign Asian Paints, could you little bit talk about it? Like, what was the idea and the process of it, and how they connected with the audience?
Sure. So what the ad basically is about, in case there are, some people who haven't watched the ad yet, is that there's this woman who's looking to get married, but every house she goes to is covered in plastics. Deliberately has been covered with plastic tents because there's too much pollution out there. And then the one that she does decide to get married to is the person whose house doesn't have that tent over it because they've used lamination wala paint. So Asian Paint has come out with this lamination technology within their paint, is what they've tried to market with that ad. So how it's speaking to a specific segment of their audience is that not everybody is going to be that focused on what the external paint of their house is like, right? A lot of people either focus on the kind of marble they want to use if they're from the high end segment of the market, right? Or what kind of stone pieces or tiles they might want to cover up their house with. But coming out with a product that enables you just to paint your house externally and still save it from the external disasters or probably factors that damage your house. They've opened up their own product to a market that was ignoring painting their houses externally initially just because of those factors.
That's right. Thanks for explaining that, Shubhrika. We'll move to our next. So we obviously taken a B2C product. Now we'll go through a B2C service in an detailed example. So we'll start with Rebecca.
Right. So, like we kind of spoke about right at the beginning, also, there's a difference in how you market for B2B, B2C, and there's also a little bit of a difference in how you go to market to different segments. Like Shubhrika said, sometimes you market to, the average Joe, everyday person, and you're looking at products that everybody can afford. And sometimes you're looking at marketing only to a specific segment, say like a higher end segment, or a more affluent audience. So the example that I've taken today is also more targeted towards the affluent audience, because I think in general a lot of people don't know the content marketing strategy of how you would market for a luxury experience. So Nikhil, could you move to my slide, please?
Sure.
So what I've taken today is it's a luxury experience that involves travel, and this is the sort of industry, or this company that is doing it offers luxury experiences for different travelers at any different place in the world. And I've taken the example today for travelers in Japan. So straight up, when you look at their website, this was the first thing that stuck out to me. What they use right at the beginning is the best off the beaten path cultural experiences for luxury travelers in Japan. So automatically, while looking at that, me coming from like a middle class background, I would be curious, but at the same time, I don't really want to delve into it because I know it's not in my price range. But just out of curiosity, I kind of went into it, and I was just sort of looking at the different experiences they offer, and what is this experience that's so offbeat that you specifically classify it just for like a luxury audience. And what I realized actually was everything that they've shown is very similar to what you and I would do if we were going to Japan. So can you move to the next slide, please?
Sure.
So what this company was offering was, a private stay, was offering, experiences in their food. You get to eat so and so different meals at these places. And everywhere they've claimed it's supposed to be very authentic, that you go to, the most authentic sites that are there, and you see the tourist destinations and things like that. And I was just thinking to myself, hey, if I was there, I'd probably do the same thing. Like, I'd also want to go for like, eating nice food. I'd probably want to go to a tourist destination. What's the thing that sets us apart? And what I realized is in their strategy for content marketing, what they're doing is promoting this sense of exclusivity. So they are promoting it as something that you won't experience anywhere else. And I think, this is something we've discussed even like in the previous session we had about exclusivity and how to market for luxurious products. They do a lot of emotional branding and they play on your emotions, where two things that they want you to feel is one, exclusivity, and the next thing is envy. So they want you to be the person who everybody else is envied by. So, you can go to all these places in Japan and maybe there's a slight price difference that, hey, you go to a fancier restaurant and you probably eat food that's, specially made by a fancy chef, or maybe you get to go in a specific exclusive time to visit this particular natural heritage park, or get to see like the cherry blossoms only at this particular time in the day when there's nobody else around. But if you think about it, at the heart of it, all these experiences are things that anybody can have. Like if you go in as a backpacker also, you're going to go and have the local cuisine. You're not going to go, whether it comes from like a fancy person or street food, you're still going to experience the same thing. But the way they're playing off of luxury experiences is just trying to go a little bit above that and trying to promote this feeling of exclusivity.
Rebecca, so how did this actually play out in terms of people searching for the luxury tours in Japan and then discovering, like, how does this full process, and then they are showcasing different sights and sounds there and food, and also how is the actual process, if you could like a little bit elaborate on
So
that?
if we, so the previous slide, like I mentioned, right, it specifically has
Yeah.
the keyword luxury there. So I did a
Yeah.
couple of different searches to just, see the search engine rankings and what would come up. And when I tried the first time, I was like, okay, luxury experiences for travelers. And then I got this page. But if I go to another page and just say, travel to Japan, I get something very similar in terms of the itinerary. And there, when you're just looking at travel to Japan, you see the keywords over there mostly involve things like pricing, where they will show you that, okay, lowest price available possible, or, get all of this at just this amount. And they know that way, at least I think the people who are running these sites know that what kind of phrases or keywords their audience is looking for. In this entire website, I did not once see anything about pricing. It was just very focused on experiences. These images that are there, each of these images had like a blog attached to it, where it's completely rich media and very pictorial content on, what you can do there and just how everything looks. So you can see the colors that they've used. It's muted colors. Sometimes it's highlighting the gold, and sometimes it's, looking very clean cut. And it's something that's more aesthetic towards a more luxurious audience. They're showing you that all of this is very exclusive for you, and everything in their content process also is targeting that affluent range. So you have experiences that are spoken about in this kind of content, versus when a normal person is looking for just, travel or ideas or things to do, everything comes immediately. The highest ranking pages are the ones that come where you can have these similar experiences on a budget. And I think that's like the keyword that sets apart the different audience itself here. So luxury here is clearly something that's a very important keyword. And I'm pretty sure as an affluent person with all the money to spend, you would look for keywords like luxurious or best in class experience or, highest rated. So these are the kind of keywords that would normally appeal to such an audience, because if you can afford the best, you're going to try and get the best anyway.
That's right. Many travel companies have showcased with influencer also, a travel influencer complete experience, like from the airport and to the hotel and his full stay, and everything is documented a very professionally made vlog. So that is kind of being used to showcase in this kind of format.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think in terms of the media that you use, the more professional it looks, the more higher class it looks, that's what really sells it. If you have something a little more raw, like how just comparing to something like the GoPro videos, the content is very raw. So you wouldn't really see it as a high class experience. You'd see it as something I can also do. It's more relatable there, and here it's like, this is not something you can get, and therefore you want it, therefore you are trying to reach that luxurious experience.
That's right. So we'll move to Shubhrika, if she could take us through the strategy for a B2C service.
Definitely. Let's move on to the slide.
Sure.
Great. So, just the way we talked about certain B2C products earlier, we'll once again touch base of the kind of services that are available for people who do indulge in high-end services, right? Instantly being one of which Rebecca has touched on very deeply, luxury hotels and luxury travel, of course. And some other examples of this can be air travel, wine tastings that we've already also touched base on, spa services, etc. These are all things that we only tend to do once we have a hefty amount of money in our pocket, right? Anyone not from that background would not like to indulge in these services until and unless it was a necessity for them, right? So air travel is not a part of our lives unless it becomes a necessity for us to reach our destination, right? So similarly, again, the format remains exactly the same, that you identify your market, you find the content format that best suits your target audience, you create that content, engage with your audience, and act on their reactions. The first example that I'm taking here is of luxury hotels, and specifically the ITC group of hotels, right? They have hotels in tier one cities specifically. And even in tier one cities, like for example in Delhi, you won't find their hotel in any part of North Delhi or East Delhi. You only find their hotel in South Delhi, the ITC Moria one, because that's where the maximum number of people who can afford their service would land, right? That's the part of Delhi that the luxuriously living people would like to visit. That is the exact place that they've chosen for it. But then that's not their marketing strategy. They don't say it out loud, right? That is just their sales strategy. The way they market themselves is to identify themselves as a heritage property for India. So, not exactly heritage in the terms of Taj Mahal, probably, but then in the terms of the kind of infrastructure, the kind of architecture that they offer to the people who arrive there, the kind of services, way their people are dressed up. That's, you'll always see women workers of ITC dressed up in a sari, and they will never greet you with a hello or hi. It's always a namaste. So it's the Indian heritage that they've taken up as a theme for their marketing strategy. Now this becomes one of their marketing strategy when it takes into account is their customer satisfaction, their customer service itself, right? When the people have reached there. But how do you specifically relate it to the content that they create? Once again, because it's a hotel, you won't be willing to go up to ITC's website and read about the experiences that people have had. But then probably the kind of pictures that the people who visit ITC or people who work for ITC marketing are posting to their social media platforms, or the kind of ad campaigns that they run. specifically video ads that they run, talks about and displays particularly the kind of infrastructure that they have and how they actually stay true to their word of promoting Indian heritage, right? Nikhil, could you go to the next slide, please?
Sure.
So that is one way that luxury hotels can do this, is to showcase how the values that they say that they stick to actually are available within their premises. The other examples could probably be Red Wines India. This is one of the companies that offers wine tasting with Sula, a wine company in India specifically, and offers you the service of going over to their vineyards and jumping in the tubs to actually make wine yourself, right? So that is experiential marketing clubbed with content marketing once again. That is one of the niches that we're seeing a lot in content marketing. But then it's not just about their experiences, right? We see pictures, yes, that is one form of content, but you can use the same thing in text format as well, specifically about when you're telling what the testimonials of your previous customers have been, or probably when you tell about how wine is made, right? So people who are wine enthusiasts are curious about how exactly is wine made. So when you go over to Red Wines India platforms, or you speak to people or you read articles about wines, is what you understand is that they tell you how to smell the wine, specifically that there's a certain way to drink wine, and you can't just pour it into a glass and drink it like water, right? There are specific places in the world where you get the best wine. How do you identify whether this wine is good or not? So these are content ideas that they have leveraged into text content as well, in addition to using video and image content. Same thing goes for Lufthansa India. So when Lufthansa came into India for the first time, it got a lot of backlash, being a German airline, that they don't probably understand the Indian values, or they don't relate to the Indian values, and people sort of resisted the airline initially. But then adapting to the market itself and identifying what Indians think air travel is like, specifically about that maybe elder citizens are not that comfortable with traveling with transport, or the food that you get in air travel is specifically bad in taste. Identifying the needs of the Indian market, they came out with the kind of services that India needs, coming out to open up more about how elders get the kind of service that they need. The air hostesses are not just German, Indians do get the employment, and then speaking to the kind of issues that India thought what were pertaining with this particular airline, coming out and not ignoring them but addressing them, that telling the market that we are actually solving them. How do you do that? Is by creating content. Now, it's not possible for a brand at the level of the Lufthansa to be able to sit down with each and every person that might have a problem with them and speak to them one on one. So content becomes your medium of communication. That is what brands are using content marketing as now, right? So you use your CSR, that's your corporate social responsibility, and you showcase it through content marketing as well. So identifying what your audience wants to understand or wants you to speak up for, and you speak up for it through the platform of content marketing. It could be any form of content marketing once again. So text, however, is one form of content that we cannot live without, even when we're in this age of short video reel content. Even then, text is still important to tell the impactful stories, and that is one thing that high end value brands have to take a lot into consideration. That corporate social responsibility is the one thing that they get the most backlash on, but then content is the medium of communication that they get back through.
That's right. Great. With the Lufthansa campaign of Shubhrika, you can say that a lot of MNCs have come on and started business in India. You can talk about any other brand like who's faced such experiences and they uses content with respect to this, showing the Indianized way of their services or the way of functioning?
I think Starbucks is a huge example of that, because initially, although Starbucks did not face resistance on any social values as such, but then Starbucks being a product that does speak to the people who are high end in the society. Just although it's a very niche sort of a product that speaks to everybody in the market. Coffee is something that everybody would consume, right? Beverages specifically is something that everybody of the country does consume. But then the kind of product that they provide is not
Hmm.
what they market, it's the experience that they market. So
Hmm.
outside of India, what Starbucks' strategy has mostly been, specifically in the US and Canada, what they've tried to market most of the time, and they still continue to do, is people coming to Starbucks just for the purpose of working and not interacting with each other, which was initially their strategy for India as well. But then eventually, Starbucks did understand the fact that Indians don't really work alone as much as people in the US or Canada do. We are more inclusive people, and we would only go out of the house when we probably most of the times have to meet someone. People going out just for the purpose of working alone when they have the chance to be working from home and not uh, spending a hefty amount of money just on one day's worth of workspace, is something that Starbucks eventually understood and took their marketing strategy towards meeting people and creating relationships now. So whenever you look at ads of Starbucks now, or Instagram posts by Starbucks, you will continue to see people coming out there to work alone with their laptops, but then that would be only a single shot, not the entire base of their ad campaign.
That's right. We'll move to our next topic. B2B has used it extensively because B2B, the core is content marketing. Say you have a SaaS product, people will discover you with content. Say you have a sales software or financial, we will Google that and try to get to it. So B2C, mein, there's more, I would say, emphasis on advertising and branding and all, but the core of it in content marketing is definitely B2B. You can ask this to any B2B marketer. So we'll go through some great examples of B2B product, that we can talk about here. So we'll start with Shubhrika.
Right. Let's go to the slide itself just for people to be able to understand what specifically we're talking about.
Sure.
One space where you see a huge use of content marketing to be able to reach businesses or clients per se is media agencies right now, which is a huge industry that's been taking up a lot in the last year. Ever since COVID hit, it's risen even more and more. So, right. So, starting with Amazon Karigar. So, this was a campaign that they came out with in 2020, and was featured on the website of Ogilvy, which is one of the best advertising platforms, advertising organizations across the globe, in fact. So, Amazon Karigar was not actually meant for the consumers of Amazon, but for the people who collaborate with Amazon as sellers, the people because of whom Amazon has become what it actually is. Because without people collaborating with Amazon as sellers, there would be no products to for the consumers to buy off of Amazon. Amazon is basically just the middleman, right? So Amazon Karigar
Hmm.
was meant for those sellers to be able to understand that they could market and they could sell their craftsmanship on Amazon now. Specifically, it's meant only for handmade products, like we can say earrings or jewelry that's handmade. There are bookmarks that we see handmade. So heritage items of India, right? Brass products, home decor products, instruments like bansuri, things like that, which only craftsmen in India make by hand. This was supposed to encourage those people to come up and connect as sellers on the platform of Amazon, so that even they could get the option of reaching out to a wider audience and sell to a larger number of people. So this is a beautiful advertisement, which I have never seen it play on the television, because once again, it was not meant for the consumers specifically. But if anyone would out there like to go over to YouTube and just search Amazon Karigar ad, you will see this amazing narration done by a very old narrator of India. I tend to forget the name of his, but that value of poetry that is held in India collaborated with aesthetics, VFX. So traditional combined with modern, amazing work done by Amazon in this campaign. And while we're on that subject, so Nikhil, could you go over to the next slide so we can look at a few more examples of that? Right. So while we're talking about Indian heritage, though, we also have platforms that have now tried to adapt to Indian market, like WeWork India. So WeWork, most of us already know that WeWork is a co-working space. I personally have visited one of the WeWork premises in Noida, Delhi, and so what they have done specifically with their campaigns is to make sure that Indians understand that this is not just a westernized concept of working anymore, and it's open for us as well. And what they tell, so for Indian market specifically, any survey that you run and any kind of survey results that you try to look out for, most of the results that will tell you is that people in India don't accept startup culture as easily as the Westerners do, even today. So for us, because security is more important, and in the private sector, security and stability is more often available in established organizations, like so the big names that we see, like right. So WeWork, what it made sure to do is to tell Indians that Adidas, Microsoft, HSBC, Salesforce, all these platforms, all these companies have also trusted WeWork. It's not just the startup culture, or it's not just the individual person who wants a space to work from, who are coming to WeWork, but in fact, larger groups of people are also coming to WeWork. So building that trust factor was the go-to agenda that WeWork India made sure to capture. And then I've talked about the marketing campaign of Slack. This was way back in 2015. I think it was still the time when Skype was the ruler of the market and Teams hadn't killed its own product. But so Slack, again, is one of the communication platforms for organizational people at a majority level, but it's not as widespread in bigger organizations as compared to Microsoft Teams or Skype for business. But then what Slack did back then was identify a problem, specifically in London. So this was the UK campaign. So what they did was identify a problem that it rains very heavily in the UK, and it rains without warning in the UK, right? So a lot of people usually don't have umbrellas on them. And then it included the concept of animals being a part of our ecosystem still, and then making sure that, we count them in as well. So animal awareness was also made a part of the deal by showcasing animals being in the office as humans. So there's a koala bear that's typing very slowly, that by the time the solution is already gone to the roads, he's just still saying good morning to the team, is one thing. So there's inclusivity in their ad campaign, which makes sure that it's entertaining and people tend to remember it. The other thing that you see with this campaign is that so what they've done is made sure to use their own colors in that ad campaign. So all of those umbrellas that we see are a solution to the problem. So what they wanted to tell the businesses out there was that we are the solution to any problem that you might face. And because communication is the basis of that company altogether, so fast communication and easy communication, easy reachability is what you get with Slack. So I think these were one of the best marketing campaigns in a B2B segment so far.
That's right. So, Rebecca, if you could take us through some examples of content marketing campaigns, really good ones in B2B.
Right. So as a B2B marketer, like I agree with you, content marketing is the core of it. I myself, work in content marketing. And one thing I've realized, like as a content marketer, is I live and swear by HubSpot. So I think that it was only apt that I used them as my example today for, some of the best B2B campaigns that I've seen them do. So Nikhil, can we move to the slide, please? Yeah, so HubSpot, for those who don't know, is actually where the term inbound marketing originated from, because they are a marketing software. They are a CRM which has, everything that covers your entire marketing funnel, a little bit of sales also, and you can automate a lot of stuff on it. And a lot of B2B companies, I think, do use HubSpot to a great extent. I myself, once I started using it, I learned the ins and outs of it, and right now I think like me and HubSpot are very much inseparable at this point. So to give you a brief on how they do their content marketing, like I said, they are a marketing company, and as like a company itself that's so in tune and so familiar with the domain, their product speaks volumes to what they do. So they don't really need campaigns as such to promote their product, but instead what they do is use just content marketing to drive home everything that they need to do, from sales to education to thought leadership, and everything that they do is based on a very, very heavy content marketing strategy. So a couple of screenshots what I have here right now is some of the things that HubSpot offers and some of the things they do. So to get your search results, to get absolutely everything that you want in terms of marketing automation, you will see HubSpot in that top page at all times, because they've got a very, very in-depth blog that they have, which they write about absolutely all topics covering marketing. And the other thing is they have their certifications that are there, which they offer for different people as well. So in general, HubSpot has two kinds of, I would say, two different types of contents for the different stages of the funnel. So when you're looking at the top of the funnel, what they offer to places like small businesses or entrepreneurs and everyone who's just starting out is they offer a lot of content on blogs. So their blogs have very educative content. It's more on what you can do, how you can start off, anything and everything that you look for. If you add HubSpot at the end, they will have an article, a video, and a lot of content on that material. So and along with examples as well. So for small businesses, when you're starting out, you're not really looking to invest in marketing automation. You're just looking for a little bit of information. And when you start that off, you're going to see HubSpot there in the first pages, and you're going to trust them as an industry leader just because of the amount of content they have in their blogs. And adding to that, the other thing what they do is they also offer the certifications that anyone can take. You don't have to have HubSpot to take the certifications, at least for some of the more general topics. But what they do for their second level of the funnel and more of their bottom funnel is they have a lot of resources. So their resources explains, as HubSpot users, how do you go about working with the software. So you have complete resources on how to use their landing pages, how to integrate with HubSpot, how to use HubSpot's SEO tool, how to use HubSpot's sales tool, and whatever else that's there. It's all just divided into how they tackle these two areas of the funnel and customers in these funnels. So I would say that the strategy that they use and their content marketing strategy that they use speaks itself for their campaigns. They don't release a particular thing saying that, hey, buy HubSpot right now. You have their normal paid ads which would be going around, but there's nothing too out there, and they don't invest a lot of time in that because they already know that with the quantum of content they have, it's sufficient. So even in terms of campaigns, they will release, educational videos that tie in line with their product. So the screenshot that's there right towards the end, the bottom right, is a small, simple screenshot of how HubSpot was displaying how to use topic clusters for SEO. And they released an entire video on it. They first told you about why SEO is important. They told you about what topic clusters mean and how they, connect to your entire industry or whatever you're doing. And then they bring in their product. So if you remember the first slide that I was talking about in terms of the funnel, what they've done is they've made their audience who is completely unaware of a topic first aware of a problem, then aware of the solution, and then finally they plug in the HubSpot product over there. In addition to that, what they do is they offer a lot of free trials. They offer, you try the product for free for a couple of days, earn a certificate, things like that. So it's a lot of campaigns that are all tied into one. And I would say, like, considering a lot of B2B companies who have softwares or SaaS products or anything like that, I would say that HubSpot is like a gold standard in terms of both the tool as well as the marketing campaigns that they use.
That's right. We'll go to our last topic that we'll be taking. Is We'll start with Shubhrika. If you could share certain tips for bloggers who are more into an expertise and written kind of content, who are putting it out there, how they can use content marketing to increase their base of their audience.
Right. Um, so once again, let's go to the slide.
Sure.
Great. So, blogging specifically has been an unexplored, I think, territory for me personally. I'm still in the early phases of blogging myself. And then it's so talking about the first point itself, it's very important to know why you're doing what you're doing, right? Why you want to become a blogger. A lot of people I've personally seen is that they tend to take up blogging just because they find out that a certain blogger of their liking earns a lot just by sitting in their homes and doing nothing is the kind of perception that a lot of people out there have. But once they get into the industry of blogging, once they start blogging themselves, they understand that it's a lot of work, a lot of learning, a lot of consistency. And then without that why power, as I usually like to call it, they tend to fall out of the practice. So which is why it's important to know why you're doing this, why you want to become a blogger. Someone could want to become a blogger for real and without having, any monetary aspirations for themselves. So it's important to understand why you're doing it. And if it's for monetary reasons alone, it's better not to do it at all because it could take up to years right now in this market. Probably 10 years ago from today, it was still only a matter of months for a blogger to take off. But then today, with the amount of bloggers that we have out there and the kind of quality content that they produce, it could take up to years for a new blogger to finally reach the position where they can leave out their full-time job and just do blogging full-time. So it's important to keep your day job, first of all, if you're a new blogger, and not just give up on that because without a source of income stream, it's nearly impossible to become a blogger in the first place. And then the second one is, as we've already established, is to stay in it for the long haul. So anyone who's in it for a temporary basis won't be able to cut it at all. It doesn't even happen in just a matter of few months. So the break even, like the point where you finally start making enough money, probably through affiliate marketing or Google Ads, AdWords, showing up on your own blog, or probably tying up with brands themselves to provide you with paid promotions or collaborate with you. That could take up to a minimum of 3 years. 3 years is basically that average number of time that's been worked out. Looking at how much a lot of bloggers took, the amount of time that a lot of bloggers took in the last 5 years or so to finally reach that break-even point where they were making just as much money as they were in their full-time jobs. So 3 years is the minimum that you're gonna have to put in. So unless you're ready to do that, probably not a good idea to be a blogger. One thing that a lot of bloggers, it could be Instagram bloggers, it could be people who have their own websites for blogs, it could be people who write for third party publications like Medium. Depends on the kind of blogging you want to do. But then, whatever it is, a lot of people I see choose not to be a part of a trend just because, why should I? This is what the rest of the world is doing, then why should I also be doing? I'm going to get lost in that entire flurry of content, which is actually not the case. So choosing the hashtag trend is important. Whatever is trending in the community at the present moment is important, because unless you do that, showing up in front of the community itself is going to become a problem. That said, I'll just jump to the point next to the next one, is that sticking to your niche, however, is still important. So any trend that could be rolling out there, until and unless you can connect it with your niche, there's no point getting into it, because you have a specific sort of audience. You don't market, or you don't speak to everybody out there. You don't create content for the entire world. There's a specific group of people that you're creating content for. And then let's say if the trend is about traveling, but you write about lifestyle of eating, let's say, right? So health lifestyle is what a blogger writes about. So picking up a trend that's going around for travel creators, in if there's a possibility, that you can make it relate with your platform itself. For example, the trend is about travel, so you would relate it to what kind of food you can eat while you're traveling, still to be able to remain healthy. That's just a content idea. But if you can fit in that trend into your content piece, that works. But then if it doesn't, you should just let it go, right? So being on top of every single trend is not important, but then choosing the right trends and actually making use of them is important. Sticking to your niche while still showing up in the trending topics is what takes you, to a boost of views and boost of traffic. And then staying on top of your socials, that's your social media platforms, of course, speaks right between these two. So those trends are something that are going to trend on social media specifically first, right? That's where you pick them up from. That is exactly where you also market and find your niche audience as well. So staying on top of your socials is equally as important as posting regularly to your website or to your blog, whichever platform you're using to blog, right? So posting regularly to your socials is just as important, because that is where you can get a lot of traffic redirected to your blog from. And then finally, coming to one point that I feel that, being a part of the SEO world myself, that a lot of people, specifically in India, try to find a jugaad way out, to find a bypass through SEO. That SEO is something that is still considered as from in a lot of denial mode in the Indian market. But then it's very important. It's not important to stuff keywords. It's not important to just make sure that you pay Google or pay bots to get your content on the top. But it's important to create quality content, because that is what's going to make you survive in the long run, once again. So long run, if that is what you're looking for yourself to be, in as a blogger, in that case, ignoring SEO is just not an option. Without that, reaching up to Google SERP 1 is not going to be possible for you. And then getting new traffic to your page becomes equally difficult.
That's right. Bloggers, my advice would be that the domain you are working in, you can blog about that, because that helps you when you're putting out new content. You do a lot of research about, you look at new topics, so you widen your horizons in your domain, and you are blogging at the same time. So if somebody is looking you up online, they can see he has written all this great content or created this great content about it. So it helps in your domain they do. And then obviously if you get pop, that is a different thing, that then you can monetize it and all, that's a later thing. But till that time, you can at least benefit in terms of your knowledge and your outlook basically towards
Yeah.
your domain.
It's actually very true. I think I have become a live example for that, because the first blog I ever launched was marketingwithshubhrika.com. So marketing is what we do in and out, day in, day out, right? So we have to research for it anyway. And then when you're able to create your audience on the same exact topic, you get paid for writing your blog already, right? Because you're already getting paid for the research that you're doing.
That's right. And people, I mean, they will see your expertise within that. I mean, if you have written on those topics and all, so if they need your services in that domain, they can, because that is the basis of content today, that it is a reference point for people to see whether you can, if you are producing the content, that creates an impression that you are expert in that. So that's my opinion on it. So, Rebecca, if you could take us through your tips for bloggers.
Right. So I've got a couple of tips. I think one thing is in terms of the actual writing, couple of tips from that, and then another thing is choosing your platforms and in terms of distribution, how you can go about it. So I think a lot of stuff was already things that Shubhrika covered. I would say like being a blogger myself and someone who has been able to monetize a good amount out of that, I would say good things to focus on is first of all whether you're a tech blogger, whether you're writing a blog for your company, or whether you're just starting out, it's important to always maintain storytelling as your base or your first level of writing. If you can, make storyboards to sort of convey your point across. It always hits home when you use storytelling to promote your blogs rather than just write about something on face value. People value the whole story behind it. People value the experience that you can take them through. Shubhrika already mentioned everything about SEO. I don't think I really need to cover everything. I think that I would just agree with her that, yeah, it is important. It's very important. It's not something that can be ignored at all. And especially when you're starting out, I mean, it's important to know what your keywords are and what you're really looking to be popular for. How do you want to popularize your brand and what's the thing that's making your name there? So get your keywords in order, narrow it down. Don't try to find a bunch of keywords and try to be an expert in absolutely everything. It never works that way. It's always good to winnow down and find just a few and stick to those. I think a lot of things that bloggers ignore is the power of the media that they have and the captions that they can use. So even when you're using any image or something in your blog, it's important to always add a caption to it and the alt text to it, because that's the stuff that helps you with your SEO. Adding that simple thing, like just not making it the original name where it's called IMG3456 whatever, just changing that to using something that's more in line with the article that you're writing or your SEO there. And using a lot of rich media, because it does help, whether you're creating your own infographics or whether you're using your own photographs. I think it's really important in a blog to have a good mix of media, especially for people who may not want to do more tech blogs, or people who don't want to go into the line of content writing that way, or who might want to look at things like, say, a fashion blog or something that you do even for a hobby. Media is more important in that side. Creating series is something that, again, I think works really well with bloggers. If you have, because I know a lot of times you're stuck for content and you're stuck to figure out what you need to do next. You're always questioning which is the next topic that I can approach. And sometimes you have your trends, like Shubhrika said. You can always use those, but you can always fall back on things and creating a series as well. So say you've released one article on any sort of platform, say even GoPro, like if you're writing an article about a product review and you've used GoPro for the first thing, you can always make that a series and continue on by reviewing other products and maybe making something, collecting that content and making it together as something that people might look forward to if you have interested readers who are looking forward to a series. Another thing I think is whatever in terms of content, and you can, the way you can generate content is by also doing pre-event and post-event blogs. Now, this is something that a lot of us do in the B2B industry when you write for webinars and when you write for events that are happening with your company. So whether you're a blog writer for a particular enterprise or whether you're doing it just for fun, if you take an event and give your anticipation about it or what you can expect from it, and then do a post event blog, that's also good content fillers that you can use. For distribution, I think, yeah, like Shubhrika said, a lot of people do get into blogging to figure out a way in which they can make revenue. And like Nikhil, like you also said, a lot of people get into it to build their portfolio. Because if you're starting out as a blogger, your logical next step would probably be to move into like a freelancing position or maybe even a content writer position. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have to make money off of it. Maybe you can't make it the traditional way of getting your Google ads or getting people to pay you to promote products, but you can always use revenue sharing sites. So I've put like a small picture over there of one of the sites that I saw, which is called iWriter. And what you do there is you just log in, create an account, and you write for them. You write a couple of articles over there, and if they approve of it, you get a small amount. It's hardly anything, and definitely not to, I wouldn't say it's something that can sustain you, but it's a good way to make a little bit of pocket money while you're doing something that is probably a hobby to you. So another thing I would suggest is looking at new platforms on which you can explore blogging. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to always create a website or a WordPress blog site for yourself. You can always become a contributor on other platforms. And one thing that I found really useful is the Quora Spaces. So I'm a pretty avid writer on Quora. And what I've discovered is with Spaces, they let you pick whatever topic you want. You can either contribute to something you've started yourself, or you can join another space and request to be a contributor there. So I have my own Quora blog where I write about storytelling, but at the same time, I do marketing growth hackers where I contribute to a little content over there every time as well. And not just Quora, like, I mean, I know Medium and Quora are technically the two most common sites that you would use, but there are a bunch of other sites as well. There's something called Thinkly. There's a bunch of different writing sites. If you just Google different writing platforms, you get a bunch of different ones there. And you can explore those because they're not well developed. So you can always use that as a trial run. Another important thing with distribution to increase your distribution is to always have collaborative blogs. I mean, not always, but you can have a few blogs where you're collaborating with someone else so that you both get across a good writing sample together, make like a co-branded collateral sort of thing, and you're promoting it on both your sites, which drives traffic to both people ultimately. Another thing is having guest blogs. So you can have guests like either industry experts contribute to content, or you can have just your friends or other colleagues who you think are also experienced in the same thing. So I think that really helps with promoting it and distribution.
That's right. So we've complete the core of the particular panel discussion. We'll just take some questions. So I'll just direct them to one of you. Both I'm not required to react, but I will just specifically which are coming my way. Um, so first for Shubhrika, how do you measure the impact of your content marketing?
Okay, so this depends, like, what form of content you have, but then one of the major metric is your engagement rate. It works for any platform in that case, any digital platform that you create content on or market your content on. Your engagement rate will work for you, and the rate which is considered to be good enough, like where we say that you're getting good traction on that platform, is anywhere between 5 to 12%. So it needn't be that all of your followers or readers are reacting to your content or are reacting to the kind of content marketing strategy that you're approaching with. But then only if 5 to 12% of your audience, for example, if you have about 1,000 people reading your content, and even if 100 of those react to it, it could mean that they leave a comment, they leave a like on your post. Probably it could be any form of engagement. They could DM you, they could post your link to their own social platforms, any form of engagement, right? But then being within the bracket of 5 to 12% is considered to be amazing. That's how you can measure your content marketing strategy, whether it's performing or not. Then the form of metrics that comes in is through specific marketing terms like CDR and your conversion rate. What are the number of clicks that you're getting? So CDR, for those of you who might not know it, is click through rate, right? So how many clicks are you getting? How many conversions are you getting? For content specifically, a conversion could just mean a person who did click on your blog but then did not read the entire blog. Could be considered that this person was a part of the CTR but did not convert, right? So people who are reading your entire blog and then are reaching out to you are your engagers. These are a few metrics that you can always look out for. You could go deep dive into the research for your own niche, that what metrics could you use to measure the impact of your content marketing. But engagement remains the highest one.
Thank you, Shubhrika. Next question for Rebecca. How do you create content based on analyzing the performance of yours? So once you've analyzed it, like there is something that I can create this content because this is being viewed more or got more clicks on it. So
Right.
if you could elaborate on that, yes.
Right. So, like Shubhrika mentioned, the metrics that you track include things like your engagement rate, you check your traffic, you check, social metrics, maybe even email metrics, and sometimes even, your search engine results page where you're ranking on that. And ultimately, the information that you gather out of that should be used as a feedback mechanism of how you create your content based on that. So it's important to, one thing is straight up analyze it and see what's working and what's not. And then deciding, whether you want to simplify that, whether you want to cater to different personas, or whether, what should you do with the information that you gather. Now, a general thing, what people should do, I think, in terms of creating it, is, one thing is analyze, what sort of personas you're targeting. Whether, if a piece of content has done well, figure out why that's doing well, and at the same time, if a piece of content is not doing well, figure out why that's not doing well is at the same time. So personalization can come from that. You can figure out if you can attract different personas based on the type of content that you're doing, whether you should distribute it just to, those different personas, and then figure out, what are the right channels to go about it as well. A lot of marketing and content marketing involves figuring out the right messaging, and then figuring out and doing a lot of experimenting in the growth stages, where you're going to make a particular hypothesis and carry it out in terms of tiny little experiments to figure out what is working best for you. So in that stage is where this question comes into play itself. So when you're trying a particular hypothesis, to either validate it or invalidate it, you need to figure out and analyze the performance. And then you can go about creating your content. I would personally say that it should be done in terms of two main formats. Whether you're doing, if you're doing something like thought leadership, you can distribute it to a wide range of audience. But with persona marketing, it's very specific. So it's not just about tracking the metrics, it's also about analyzing it and figuring out who are your audience in the entire thing as well.
Great. Next question for Shubhrika. What is the relation between branding and content marketing?
Great question. I really love when people come up to relate branding with content specifically. So I'll talk about this framework once again. I think, Nikhil, we've touched base a little bit on this in one of our previous sessions as well. Is that your branding can relate to your content directly. Your content itself could become a measure of your branding, right? So, since we have different forms of content, right? We have image and video, specifically talking about media, right? So the framework has four structures, sectors that you can target. One first being your visual content, right? So visual basically meaning that what is the color scheme that you're targeting. Okay. What is the theme that you target whenever you create, let's say for example, you create a thumbnail to your YouTube video, or you create an Instagram post, or you create a thumbnail to your blog post, probably, right? So what is the color scheme that you target? The means of branding is basically to let audience identify you without having to tell them your name precisely, right? So the way you can do it is by figuring out your logo, making it impactful, right? Easy yet impactful. There was this campaign McDonald's did a little while back, in 2021 itself, beginning of the year, wherein they just put up half the arches of their logo. So they have two arches to their logo, and they put up only one on bus stations. In I think that this was in London somewhere. And then it was so easy to identify that this is McDonald's because of the shape of their arch, first of all, and then the color scheme that they use. Whatever is the background, the arch is going to be of yellow color, right? So that is one visual content. Then you can take up text. What is the font that you always use? Every single time you use the same text font, same text size, same text color again. That is your text framework to it. You can also take up audio as a part of that framework, meaning that whenever, for example, you create a YouTube video, people who create video content or audio content, for example, a podcast, so your intro could have the same background music every single time that you present that intro, right? So that is how you use audio as the framework. So these are a few things that you can use for branding relating to your content, right? The final thing I would say is to find the niche, of course, within itself. So a brand could support one particular topic of CSR requirements, or could stand up with one particular social issue, or a brand could solve one particular problem, could have one particular, let's say, service. So anything that your brand stands up for could become your content strategy itself.
Thank you, Shubhrika. Next question for Rebecca. Can an innovative product or service be sold only via content marketing?
Okay, so I'm guessing, yeah, this question stems from the fact of whether a product is just starting out or something,
Hmm.
or even a service is in their beginning stages when you don't have a lot of
I think
budget.
this would be referring to some new, like in a product, a new kind of an invention or something,
Okay,
which has not been out there, and even service, something which is not like in the product. We can take the camera, the one camera stand that is used, which can follow you basically, as you
okay,
are say
okay.
dancing or something. And for a service, I would say it would be very established now, but the room sharing, that B2B, sorry, bread and breakfast,
Hmm.
Airbnb had done. It was maybe 5 6 years when they had come. That was innovative at that time. So just like an example, for a service in that way, but something which is like new, disruptive in the market, and they don't have a budget, and can they just use with the content marketing cell initially?
Right, right. So I think definitely the content marketing is a very important part, especially when you're starting out, and especially more like if it is an innovative product or service that has never been heard before. Because primarily your first thing on entry into the market is getting through that education phase. And when you're getting through that entire phase, you need a lot of content for the same thing. So naturally, I think that is your go-to strategy and possibly your only strategy at that point, because you won't be investing too much in marketing right at the beginning. You're trying to get the education out there. You're trying to get, at least when you're first starting out, your sales are probably coming in just from fewer channels, or maybe word of mouth, or maybe smaller events there. So I think it is possible to be sold via content marketing itself. One thing is in terms of creating that content to explain your product or service, and what is the innovative use cases that are there, how does it come into the market, what problem is it solving right now. But apart from that, I think just with keeping a strong search engine optimization strategy, keeping very strong keywords in place, it's very easy to get noticed and get be aware of in the market just with content marketing. So with your social, with your SEO, with creating a lot of content, getting even influencer marketing at that point, just to push across content, it's a good starting point, and I'm very sure it can be sustainable too. Just taking the example of HubSpot itself, they started off as a very small thing where all they did was create content, and the place where they are today wouldn't have come just because they had a lot of money. To get that initial funding also came because of the awareness of their product. And innovative products like the thing you mentioned, a camera following you around, I wouldn't have even heard of it if you didn't tell me. So I would only know about it if I see it in mainstream media, if I see it connected to what I'm looking for. So I think that's where it becomes important to connect your keywords, to know that what sort of audience would be coming in, or how can I direct this sort of audience towards my product. If it's someone who's a blogger or a vlogger and is someone who's trying to record themselves, naturally you'd figure out that the keywords or phrases that they're using, or the SEO topic clusters, would be around how do I record myself, or how can I shoot myself from all angles, or things like that. So I think that's important when you're starting out, and it's very much possible to do just content marketing. Like you said, it's the backbone, or the core of a lot of businesses right away. So with it, when it's B2C, I think at the beginning it's very hardly relied on. When it's B2B, it's probably the only thing you're doing right at the beginning.
That's right. Next question for Shubhrika. How is buyer psychology related with your content marketing strategy?
I think it's very closely related because at the end of the day, your audience that's consuming your content are the people that you're trying to convert to your buyers, right? Instead of it working the other way around, it could work the other way around for a lot of brands as well. But then when we target our content marketing strategies, the main focus is to be able to convert those people into buyers themselves, right? So converting sales is our main focus, of course, anyway. So it's important to understand what our audience is like, right? What their psychology is, right? Like buyer psychology, apart from the specific people being in the picture, buyer psychology as a general concept, if you look at it, is that they would just want to know how this product or service is going to affect their lives and whether they can afford it or not. As long as our content strategy can answer those questions, we are serving into the buyer psychology ourselves.
That's right. So the last question to Rebecca is what is the role of content marketing in creating credibility and proving expertise in a domain?
Right. So I think this is a very important question, because a lot of times when you do content marketing, people kind of forget and try to do product marketing, which is more sales focused, versus content marketing, like Shubhrika said, is more branding focused. So with a brand, it's important to establish something known as thought leadership in any sort of company. When you do your content marketing, you have your product related content, and you have your additional content and thought leadership that establishes you as an industry expert. Because people, when they're going to your product, they are, on one hand, of course, they're going to see what your product can do, but to know the story behind it, or know how have you created such a product or service, You have to establish yourself as someone who is an expert in a domain and give yourself the credibility by creating similar types of content. So this generally comes in the middle of the funnel stage in content marketing and involves collaterals that are like white papers or webinars or even some sort of use cases and things like that, or even testimonials. So you establish thought leadership by doing that. You have people in your company who you position as industry experts. You say that these guys know what they're talking about, and the higher level management generally, those would be your industry experts who would advocate for your product and your company by just saying that they know the entire domain. And I think it's important for content marketers to realize that if your uh, collaterals or the content you're producing is very product focused, it will lose credibility, because no matter how much you try to sell your product, people will always assume that you're just trying to sell it. They are not going to assume that you know anything about it. It's the same way as saying, if I would rather buy a product for my pet from someone else who already has a pet. I would like to know that that person has expertise in the domain that they're talking about. Or same thing, like I would buy food from, a chef who's established. I wouldn't just buy it from someone who has just given me a plate saying that, no, I made this at home.
That's it. Great. So we are done with all our questions. So we'll just move to the closing comments by the panelists before we end. So Shubhrika, anything you want to share about just closing comments about the topic and where are we going forward in content marketing?
I think we still have a long way to go. I don't think that we've explored every single platform that we can. For example, Clubhouse is not that popular still in India. Um, Instagram did launch rooms, but then we don't use it yet. So a lot of places where brands can leverage those functionalities being offered as well. And since you've given me the platform, I'd love to share that thanks to one of our sessions itself, I've started working on a book myself
Oh,
of marketing.
congratulations.
Thank you so much. So overall, this would be my second book, but then the first one in a nonfiction domain. So where I think what we need now is to understand the fact that we as consumers and a market are changing, and then effectively our marketing strategies also need to change. So what aches me a lot is that in our academia we still learn the principles of Philip Kotler, which definitely do apply with the 4 P's of marketing, etc. But then those definitions don't apply exactly in the same manner that they used to back in the 20s, right? So those things need to change is what I think we as current marketers need to come forward and create new frameworks, create new definitions of what we do day in and day out, why analytics has impacted marketing so much, what exactly can we do more in the digital space. So all of which is the focus of this creation that might be available by the end of 2022, called Millennials Don't Agree. So there's so much that we as millennials and the Gen Z don't agree with in the marketing era anymore, right? Specifically, like I've mentioned, the definitions of marketing terms back in the 20s. So that's one thing. But yeah, I think we still have a long way to go to explore content marketing. There's so much that we can create, so much we can talk about, such a huge difference that marketing specifically can bring into the world. So let's make it a better place being marketers ourselves.
That's great. Rebecca, your closing comments?
Yeah, so I think just adding to whatever Shubhrika already said, I just have a few last things to say. In terms of content marketing, I think there is a lot of scope to leverage platforms which you haven't used before. More than that, it's more about, organizations also giving freedom to their marketers to explore things that can go beyond what they think might be best for the business, right? I think a lot of times marketers have that sort of creative hampering that's done, and you're a little bit restricted in terms of what you can do, what you cannot do. But I think in general, the scope that content marketing has gives you a lot of area for for experimentation. And I think that's something that severely needs to be recognized. People need to be able to experiment more and not just sit to the same rules that are already established. Like Shubhrika said right at the beginning, even things like Google Analytics and SEO strategies and all, it's so different from what it used to be and what it is today. So that's my 2 cents on the entire thing.
Thank you. So thanks you for joining me, Shubhrika and Rebecca. It was been a great session. I'll
Thanks,
see
Nikhil.
you all. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for having us, Nikhil. Thanks a lot.
Thanks. Bye, Shubhrika. Bye, Nikhil.
Bye.
Great. It was a very awesome session that we had on content marketing. We covered the funnel of it and the various strategies that were there. Very specific questions were answered. So, if you would like more to see more content like this, which is very specific in the marketing domain and answers might answer a lot of queries of yours within that, please subscribe to the Marketing Intelligence YouTube channel. We are looking at having a community in that also, where we will have certain events in it. So if only that's, you can only be a part of it if you, excuse me, if you're a subscriber. So please go YouTube and subscribe to the Marketing Intelligence channel. A lot of with respect to this kind of format, where we are presenting certain things in marketing, there are a lot of interesting guests coming up who will share, who have actually worked on the back end of those particular campaigns or brand work or whatever, and they will share very specific information which will be very useful to you. So thank you for joining me. I'll see you then. Bye.